Welcome to the Integration Station. I'm Naturally Ashley, your host, here to guide you down the rabbit hole into the world of psychoactive plants, frogs, and fungi. Good morning, you beautiful souls, and welcome to the Integration Station. I'm Naturally Ashley, your host, here with a special guest, Greg. And many of you may already know him or have worked with him in some way, shape, or form because he's been an asset in our group since the beginning. For anybody who is new here, hasn't stumbled onto our network yet, or, is still relatively new to this space, what's really cool about bringing this guy in is his experience across the spectrum, working with different psychoactive plants, frogs, and fungi, this medicine from the earth. He also has his roots in the recreational space and addiction. So this is a really insightful episode for anybody who is just starting out or who knows somebody who's suffering with addiction and really looking for that roadmap to a better life. So without further ado, I'm going to skip the talking and pass them over to you.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network, here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Hello, you beautiful souls, and welcome to the Integration Station. I'm Naturally Ashley, your host, here with a special guest, Greg. I've really been looking forward to having him on here, and we've kind of been going back and forth a little bit. But I met him this summer in person. He was been part of our network long before that. Really a great asset in my own personal journey, just with the wealth of knowledge that he brings in and life experience, and I think friendship have come this point too. And Absolutely. Then also, in his story and just this same knowledge, I feel like it needs to go beyond what we've created and what we've shared with each other and just share it with more people. So that was really the inspiration for this, because I know that there's more about you that I don't even know yet. And also whatever I do know, I really do believe needs to be shared with more people. So without, wasting any more time here, if you want to share your story, what brought you to psychedelics and what brought you here?
So my first psychedelic experience, I was about 17 years old. Me and my friend got a quarter of mushrooms each. We really had no idea what we were doing. So we each ate the full 7 grams. And it was a mind-blowing experience, to say the least. I thought I was going to be stuck in that state for the rest of my life, and it pretty much scared me off of psychedelics for a good 10 years anyways. And in that 10 years, I was drinking and doing cocaine, and then started doing pills. It was Percocet I started off with. I was doing at the beginning, I was doing 10 a day, and it led into 25 a day with 15 tall cans of beer. And then slowly it progressed into using heroin daily. After trying to get off of heroin, I got onto the methadone program, which was, it just didn't work for me very well, to say the least. I was still using heroin as well as doing methadone. So I kind of realized on my own that had to stop, because my life was just going down the drain pretty much. And my friend gave me a tab of LSD, actually, which is not something you really want to do when you're doing heroin. It's not really a pleasant experience, to say the least, but it definitely opened my eyes to the ways that it pretty much made clear that I had to stop and change my life. So I didn't use LSD to get off of heroin, but it definitely opened my mind to the realization that I needed to change my life. So I still do credit that LSD experience for inspiring me to make the steps to change my life. I did go to rehab for 75 days. And then once I got out of rehab, I stayed clean for about 1 month entirely, like no other substances. Then I started incorporating cannabis and LSD into just my healing journey. And about 14 Saturdays in a row, I had an LSD experience, and I was good for a while, but I wasn't incorporating the lessons I learned from the psychedelic experiences into my day-to-day life. I was just kind of getting the messages and realizing what I had to do, but unless you put the work in, nothing's going to change. And I ended up relapsing. So I relapsed for about 6 months, and then again, my life was really just going down the drain, and it was pretty much between being a drug addict for the rest of my life or getting my shit together. And well, I then I turned to mushrooms for that. Like I got myself onto Suboxone, which was, I mean, I had to go through the 24 hours withdrawals before I could start incorporating Suboxone in. And I mean, I did that all sober essentially, but once I got into a good spot with the Suboxone is when I started incorporating mushrooms into the healing experience, because I was already grounded, I guess you could say. And then I looked to incorporate the mushrooms to kind of guide me on what to do next. So I started microdosing because, I mean, after that one experience I had when I was 17, I just thought all mushroom experiences were going to be like that. So I was always a bigger fan of LSD as opposed to psilocybin at the time, at least, just because I just had better experiences with it. Not necessarily better, but more manageable. So I was microdosing for about 6 months. I stopped the career I was doing. I got into cannabis. I started working for the gray market dispensaries just before legalization. It was a medical dispensary. We had naturopaths there, so it was as professional and legit as you could get without being totally legal, which was still fine. And these little steps got me into a little bit more into the psychedelic community. And then I started hearing about DMT from a friend and how it had a major impact on their life. Excuse me. So then I tried DMT for the first time, and it profoundly changed my life pretty much immediately. Whereas LSD and psilocybin, they were good and essential tools in my journey getting to me to where I am now. But the DMT was like a slap in the face, a good one, like a very positive change. Like immediately, the best example I can give, like I went from a staunch atheist before smoking it to considering myself a spiritual human like an hour after. And now I describe myself as a spiritual person to anybody that I meet. And I try incorporating spirituality into my life on a day-to-day basis. So that pretty much got me to where I am now. And that's the story of my journey.
Thank you so much. Going back to some of those areas of, dark night of the soul, or like, it really resonated with me when you said I wasn't incorporating the lessons. So then, of course, I relapsed. Now, the same thing happened to me when I was sober for a year. And then I went back to the hospitality and tourism industry, which was against my alignment. I stayed sober for a little bit, but I knew and that things were going to slip. I knew that I was going to slip, and it did happen. It was short-lived, thankfully, because I had already that foundation to go back to. But that's all thanks to the psychedelics too. they very much, in the same way, were great guides. But it really, truly is up to the person to listen. Like, this is no magical pill. It's, or,
Absolutely
you know,
not. And that's a point I'd really like to get across, is that some people are thinking that that psychedelics would be a magical cure-all, and they definitely aren't. Psychedelics are a tool, an essential tool to sobriety or getting a person to the next stage of where they need to be in life, but they definitely don't do it for you. They give you messages and teach you how to get yourself into a better place, but if you don't follow those messages and do the steps to get you there, it's not going to work for you. Absolutely not.
Yeah, you still have to do the work. They'll show you what to do, but it's up to you to do it. You know, it takes responsibility. And that's really the Toltec path to freedom too, taking 100% responsibility for all of it.
Absolutely. Excuse me.
So from your first experience, when it was just you and your buddy, 7 grams each, you said you got scared, had like a bad trip. It deterred you for like 10 years or so. What was it like? What would you say to anybody who's had bad trips like that, or is scared to try it again because they've had a bad trip?
The experience itself seems a lot worse at the time. Even afterwards, when I was young at 17, it just wasn't as much scared me off of it, but it wasn't aligned with what I was doing at the time. I wanted to do drugs to get high and have a good time and party, and I just associated mushrooms and the psychedelic experience with something completely different than that. So I always had that in the back of my mind, that I considered it more of like a medicinal journey as opposed to a recreational drug. And I was into recreational drugs at the time, and that's all I wanted to do. I had no intention of getting any messages or life-altering, reality-shattering experiences. That just wasn't for me. But after I had abused the recreational drugs for so long and I could not stop abusing them, I was open to anything. Like after rehab and the 12-step programs had zero impact on my life, and I didn't want to live the rest of my life as an addict in recovery that was weak and powerless against my own thoughts. That just wasn't for me too. So I needed something, and I was ready for a reality shattering experience. And I've been hearing that they've been using psychedelics in addiction therapy for quite some time, but I didn't know anybody that was doing it, so I pretty much just did it myself.
Did you find working with the psychedelics when you were on the Suboxone help with the withdrawal symptoms?
Suboxone pretty much isn't. So the difference between Suboxone and methadone is it's an opioid blocker as opposed to a suppressant. So once you get onto Suboxone, it's a lot easier to wean off of it as opposed to methadone. So psychedelics really didn't help so much with the withdrawals. Any time I had consumed them, the psychedelics more so just helped with the life perspective. And when you're going through withdrawal and stopping whatever it is that you're abusing, you will find reasons in your mind to stop your sobriety journey and go back to that crutch, whatever it was, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever it may, gambling, whatever it may be. Your brain will try and trick you into going back to that. The psychedelics kind of I don't know the word I'm looking for, I guess it's an essential tool in correcting that. They will change your perspective and show you the bigger picture as opposed to your subconscious that's still addicted, showing you just the reward part of whatever it was you're abusing. So the psychedelics didn't help with withdrawal so much, the physical withdrawal, but definitely the mental withdrawal aspect of it.
Yeah, and that's so important too. It's like that default mode network.
Yes.
You know, where we get into this in Napoleon Hill's work, Outwitting the Devil. That's when the drifter comes in. It's like, you know, trying to get you to follow that path so that you can be dominated, because that's what addiction is. It's this dominating force inside of yourself. But when you're working with the psychedelics, it's almost like the blocker of the drifter, because all of a sudden it's like you're open and guided and connected.
Guide you away from the drifter onto your true path of, I guess, enlightenment or whatever it may be. I'm still new to this whole spirituality thing, so I'm very careful which words I use, because I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person, so I don't want my description of my spirituality to sound religious.
Yeah, I realize mine does too. Sounds religious. I come back to it. I think it's just so hardwired in me.
Absolutely.
As a child, I was not like, I'm Native American. If anything, I'm like against religion. But for some reason, I was put in Catholic school, and I went to church on Sundays. With,
me as well. You know, I was actually an altar boy, so I know the Catholic religion is now, and I don't agree with it. I mean, if it's helping people in their life I don't knock anything like that. It's just not for me.
Yeah, it wasn't for me either. I was suspended every single year, including in kindergarten. I really didn't fit into the school system, and definitely not the Catholic system.
No, it didn't. We didn't jive. That's to put it lightly.
Yeah. But it was part of my story, right? Like those messages, they obviously stuck, you know. They tried really hard to get it in.
And it has its place, and it was born from good morals. So it just humanity that sours things along the way.
So, with just in working with the different psychedelics, mushrooms, LSD, DMT. Can you break down for the audience what your experiences were like with each of them? How they're the same, how they're different?
The only way that I would describe them as being the same is they distort your vision. The experience in all three of them are completely different. Mushrooms, depending on the dose, I guess, could be anywhere from a mild visual distortion to like giggles, but once you're taking like a therapeutic dose around 3.5 plus, it really can shatter your reality entirely. Like, I know I've said that a few times, and by that I just mean nothing seems like it's the way it should be. Like your house might not even feel like it's your house. It's just, and it feels like there's something spiritual with you, like you're getting messages from the universe or whatever it may be. It's not like you're hearing voices, but ideas are put into your head that you wouldn't have thought of normally, essentially, just like on how to improve. Like some people find it very negative when they have a mushroom experience where they get messages that everything they're doing is wrong in their life. And that might be subconsciously the reason why they're not happy in their life. And that's why they've gotten this depression. And some people have that one mushroom experience and change their life entirely. They'll quit their job, they'll move to a different location, whatever it may be. And that scares some people away from doing mushrooms and thinks that that person, say, lost their mind. But really, that might have just been them finding out this core reason that they're unhappy in their life. And if they don't want to change it, they don't have to change these things, but maybe they're never going to get better. But who's to say that once they move and change their life and career, that their whole life's perspective will change for more positive. So, I mean, the mushrooms have that power to do that. Whereas, say now, LSD, not so much. LSD is more of ideas like you're more of a perspective change, if you will. Like you can, on a smaller dose, you get a more of a recreational experience. Laughing, everything seems funny. A body's tingling, visual distortions, maybe like the walls are wavy or the carpet is swirling. And you'll have ideas and different perspective change, but it's more so like you've come to the realization yourself as opposed to getting messages. It's really, really difficult to describe to somebody who's never experienced them before, but I think what I'm describing will resonate with the people who have had different experiences with the three psychedelics that we're referring to right now. So again, it's more of it feels more like everything is your own. It's more like all in your own head as opposed to messages from outside. And now when we come to DMT, it's completely different than any other psychedelic. If you smoke DMT, you're blasted off into another dimension altogether. Now, they're doing studies whether or not it's all in our minds or whether we're actually going to another dimension. But me and my personal experience, it feels real. And you're definitely, it's the only psychedelic you can actually communicate with these entities or beings or energy, if you will, that I would assume gives you the messages through the psilocybin. Psilocybin, as it takes a little bit longer to break down in your gut and absorb, and you're not getting that full blast. But when you're smoking DMT, you're flooding your receptors, and your body is overwhelmed by the amount that you're consuming. Your MAOI enzymes are the actual MAO enzymes catch up, and that's why we're only able to experience like a 10 to 12 minute experience, if you will. So it's more short-lived than the other two. 10 minutes as opposed to 6 to 8 hours with psilocybin and around 10 hours with LSD, but it's more profound in that 10 minutes than a full 10 hour, 8 hour psilocybin or LSD experience. It's in its whole other world altogether, DMT.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this. We're gonna go to share our sponsors in just a couple minutes here, but before I do, I just want to share like what you were saying there about the mushrooms and DMT, how the messages may be the same, but in one of them you're actually doing the straight up communication with them, but it's harder to bring anything back. And then whereas mushrooms, you can bring a little bit more back, but it's not the same direct communication. Like you're not seeing the energy or the beings the same way. What McKenna would call the McKenna elves or DMT elves. But it was Dennis McKenna said something so profound to me on a call I was doing with the McKenna Academy, and it was that their receptors, when you actually break it down into the molecule, they are bringing you into the same dimension. And one thing that's coming up in these studies that you were talking about is that so many people working with DMT are going to the same dimension that, they really are inspired to find out where is this actual place.
Absolutely. And they're doing, I think it's Imperial College in the UK. They're doing an actual DMT IV drip. So it's able to keep people in the DMT realm for up to an hour, as opposed to when you smoke it, you are there 10 minutes. And by the time you've gotten to where you are, it's pretty much already suppressing in your system. And it's really difficult to get a full idea of what's going on. But the studies are doing, the Imperial College are definitely, like you were saying, showing people are all going to the same realm and having the same experience. So that's definitely intriguing.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we'll go for now. I'll see you after a bong/bathroom break.
Excellent. I could use one myself. Let's see.
All right, we'll share our sponsors now. We'll see you all soon. Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
At Legacy 420, we believe in being different.
Experience the difference of quality control.
Our labs provide tested formulations for all of our products.
Experience the difference in trust.
Our customers can trust that we are following up-to-date COVID precautions for their safety.
Experience the difference in accessibility.
We're open 7 days a week. Please visit our website, legacy420.com, or contact us for curbside pickup as well as nationwide mail order shipping.
Legacy 420 values overall wellness.
Come and experience the difference of Legacy 420.
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
Let's share Pace everywhere. That way it can help create peace. People everywhere advocating cannabis education. CP operates a medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888, and grow on with CP.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Pace Radio is the people advocating cannabis education radio network.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Welcome back. Welcome back, audience. Greg. Oh man, we gotten into a lot already just in that first little section, and I do have some follow-up questions if you're down for it.
Absolutely.
Right, so we know your three main mushrooms. Your three main medicines were mushrooms, LSD, and then DMT. Found you, and I'm curious what else you've worked with, because I know recreationally you were working with other things too. And I guess the real reason why I'm asking is so that you can paint some more pictures of the differences between, what some of the recreational things that you were doing, alcohol and even pills like Percocets. What's the difference between those and what these psychedelics are doing? And then even beyond that, what are some other ones that you've worked with, and what are some experiences that they've brought you? Because they're all a little bit different, and you've got a vast you've been through a lot in your life, and I can relate to that too. So
I've tried a lot, that's for sure. Yeah. So when I classify the recreational drugs as cocaine, meth, the alcohol. Now, pain medication definitely has its place medicinally for terminally ill cancer patients or what have you. But I had no pain, and I was just straight up abusing them. They don't. There's no work being done there. You're just essentially using those to numb something. You don't gain anything from alcohol or cocaine or any of the other recreational drugs I've mentioned. You're just people use them, as including myself, to just get by the day-to-day struggles, if you will. You're not happy with your job, not happy with your current life situation. Alcohol and cocaine are great for that, but you're not doing any work. You're just treading water, in my opinion, at least. The mushroom
and then come downs are horrible. Like, I remember the cocaine days. It was never my ideal drug, but I've done more of it than most people.
and that's the problem with it, because the best way to get rid of a come down is to do more cocaine or drink more alcohol or whatever that may be. The come down is essentially your body just detoxing from it and craving more. Exactly. It's not there's no work being done there. It's
no.
But psychedelics are completely different. They can be used in smaller. Some people they affect everyone differently. Some people use them recreationally. I just, every single time, not every time, but I'd say about 50% of the times I'm getting a reality shattering experience that I don't want to be at a festival or at a party when it's happening to me. So I respect the psychedelics and I do them differently, but there are people that use them to have fun as well, and I don't knock that, because even then, even if you're not doing the work, some work's being done on you when you've consumed psychedelics. Even if you're not noticing it at the time, little perspective changes are happening.
Like if someone falls asleep on the Reiki table, they're still getting it, even though they're not conscious of it.
Absolutely. So, and again, like, you're not getting any messages from the recreational drugs. Even if you're using a psychedelic recreationally, if the psychedelic decide that you need a reality shattering experience, you're going to get one, and you can't really turn that off. And that's why I consider those medicine, because they will give you what you need, whether you want it or not. And the come down, yes, you're a little worn out afterwards, and you might even feel a little low the next day, but that's just because you've been through a whole bunch, and you might have got some messages you didn't want to hear. But once you've thought about the messages, I guess, a little more, and you've just either incorporated them into your life or just ignored them completely, then it goes away and you're fine. But you're not craving more, and you might have to, like, even me myself, I've done psychedelics countless times, and I still have to work myself up to doing them again. I gotta prepare myself. I have to coax myself and motivate myself to do a DMT, LSD, or mushroom trip experience. Even though I've had so many, I still respect what it can do, and I don't do it just on a whim. Whereas when I was abusing alcohol, cocaine, or what have you, heroin, pills, I would do it just because I could. And that's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it is, I think, hard to do these things over and over again. Like, you need that break between them. And I even noticed with microdosing, I'd say, okay, because even before I got into microdosing, I thought the only thing there was Terence McKenna's heroic dose. Like, yeah. I just thought you go big or you go home.
Oh, what's the point?
Yeah.
They didn't work. I'm like, you can do 1 gram? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, when I thought about microdosing and I finally got into that, by that point in time, I was a mom, and so it actually came at the perfect time in my life.
Absolutely. Microdosing is great. It definitely has its place.
Yeah, I was scared, like, what happens if I get hooked on this? What if I become dependent, like as if it's an antidepressant or something like that? What if I do like and I want to keep doing it? But then I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do it every day. I won't follow any protocol. I forgot to take it. You know, you wouldn't be able to do that with pills. Just forget to take it.
No, and you don't crave them. There definitely, if it's been a while since my last heroic dose or large psychedelic experience, I feel the need. I need to do it again. Like, I'll just be focusing on smaller, petty things and falling back into my old ways, old perspective, if you will. And then I realized that it's time to do it again, but I don't have to crave psychedelics like I craved cocaine or heroin. It's not even in the same book. No, not at all.
So another question is, other than when you were a kid, were you ever intertwining the recreational drugs with different types of psychedelics? And what would you say to anybody who, is doing that or has had those experiences?
Well, again, it depends what you're doing the psychedelic for. If you're looking for a recreational experience, well, it's a tricky question, because I consider MDMA a recreational drug. Now, I know it has its place in therapy, and I totally admit that I have a negative bias against MDMA because I abused it when I was younger. It was ecstasy, so there wasn't just MDMA. There was other things in the pills. There was meth or heroin or whatever, cocaine in the pills to direct the MDMA. So it wasn't MDMA on its own that I was abusing, but I stay away from it myself. But I do know a lot of people that won't do a heroic dose of mushrooms without also partnering it with MDMA. And I mean, that has its place, but you're pretty much guaranteeing yourself a positive experience. Now, a bad trip is negative at the time, but once you get past it, I find those to be the most healing. So if you want the most out of your mushroom experience, I would suggest doing them, or any psychedelic, I would suggest doing them on their own. But if you're new to them, it's pretty much up to the person who's doing it. I really don't want to speak one way or the other against it, but I find that if you pairing a psychedelic with another recreational drug to dampen or change the experience of the psychedelic on its own, I think that you're ripping yourself off, and you're not going to benefit as much as you could if you just took the psychedelic by itself. Now, there can be some definitely hard psychedelic experiences, but those are definitely the ones that will help change your life if you allow them to, and you incorporate whatever they've shown you that you didn't like, and you try and change that about yourself. That's how they work, and that's how the psychedelics can change your life for the better. That's how they changed my life for the better. So yeah, that's how I would answer that question.
Yeah. And thank you so much. I'm kind of having flashbacks there myself of, I had never thought about it the way that you explained it, where they won't even take the 5 grams without the MDMA. I've had people at my house where they were doing that, and I didn't understand why, because I had the same thing as you, where it's like, even though it's MDMA, not ecstasy, it's still synthesized. I still don't really want to touch it. I did do it, but not mixing it with anything. I still wouldn't do that. I do believe that they all have their own separate messages. So yeah, I was curious of that perspective. I'm glad that you shared.
I've done it. When I first started messing a little bit again with psychedelic, I steered clear of them for 10 years, but I mean, I dabbled with them a little bit before I started using them for spiritual, but I wouldn't touch mushrooms even like 1 gram unless I had an ecstasy pill to take with it. I mean, it's an experience, but it's more of a recreational high as opposed to a medicinal experience.
Yeah. And I finally tried MDMA again after a long time, because ecstasy really what became a problem for me at one point. I would just know they weren't enough for me, and I didn't have to pay very much for them because I would sell them in the high school for other people. So even though I didn't attend, I was still young enough that I could get in and out of the doors. Right. So for me, there was no loss of anything in it. But when I realized it was a problem and I got myself better, and it was from listening to my dad. My dad was just explaining to me how they're a bathroom drug essentially, and some stuff that went into it. And he was a biker before he passed away. He was born into that life, so he had a lot of knowledge, and I took him seriously. He wasn't mad. He wasn't anything. He was just straight up explaining it. And I got myself off. Yeah, I needed the honesty. I needed the space where I could be myself. I wasn't bad, but you know, I got what I needed, and there was obviously better tools out there. You know, he didn't share what those were exactly, but you know,
it's good to find things out. He wanted you to find things out for yourself, because you can't tell people what tools they need, because everybody needs a different tool. So
absolutely, and he gave me that space, which I appreciate. And when I tried MDMA again, it was years later, probably 10 years later or something, and I purged so bad. And then the most incredible thing happened where I was like just seeing auras, and I couldn't even believe it. I had a couple other experiences, but it still never sat with me. I don't know if it's because I programmed myself over the years of not letting it in. So it would be really purgative and hard on me. It wasn't the same party drug that I remembered with ecstasy, and it wasn't the same thing as people were doing at the raves, because I went to one of the raves on it, and it was not as enjoyable as everyone made it seem.
I was listening to an interview, and I probably shouldn't even be referencing it because I can't speak on it, but there's studies being done by university that people who have done so much MDMA, they actually overload their receptors, so they hit a point where they actually get the opposite effect from MDMA every time they do it. Now, I can't reference the interview or the studies that are being done, but it's definitely a thing. So I think that might be what you and I both experience now if we were to touch MDMA.
Yeah, it definitely didn't have the same effect. And it was more pure. I know it was pure, unlike what I had when I was a kid, which is why I allowed it into my body. But the experience, I did it 2 or 3 times, and it was, you know, the one time didn't even need to happen, to be honest. But it's something to talk about now. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to be here sharing that experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so what, out of the psychedelics, which ones are you still working with now? What are the reasons for still staying close, having this reverence and respect?
I believe that it's going to be a lifetime thing for me, that I'll be working with psychedelics, and I'm more than okay with that. At the beginning, I was incorporating experiences a lot more frequently. Now I do a 4 to 5 gram dose of mushrooms 3 or 4 times a year, LSD 2 or 3 times a year, and I smoke DMT once a month. And that's basically just, I lead a pretty busy life right now. I got a lot of things going on, so it's just pretty much the time that I can commit to it. And sometimes you need a day after a mushroom or LSD experience, depending on what messages and experience you got, and you don't really know that until afterwards. So I usually try and allot 2 days for myself for a mushroom or a LSD experience, that the day I'm tripping or experiencing the psychedelic, and then a day to just regain and process everything that my mind went through the day before. Sometimes I don't need the second day, but it's usually good to have it there anyways. So that's pretty much the reason that I do the LSD and psilocybin a little less frequently. And DMT is great because it's only about 10 minutes, and you're still getting the same perspective change benefits, mood change benefits as you would from a 10-hour LSD or 6 to 8 hour psilocybin experience. In the 10 minutes of DMT, about 45 minutes after the 10-minute experience, you need to process it, and then you're pretty much back down to ground zero. Now, I usually will give myself the rest of the night, but I don't need the next day, and then I can just go back to work or whatever it was that I was doing, and I still feel the same way I would after like a 6 to 8 hour mushroom experience. But I still like to make sure that I incorporate the mushrooms and LSD into them, because again, like you said, in the 10 minutes, it's a lot easier to lose the message you got, as opposed to when you're getting the same or similar messages for 6 to 8 hours on the psilocybin or 10 hours on LSD, it kind of sticks with you a little bit more. You have time. I would suggest writing down the messages that you get. You can't really do that when you're on DMT because, you're not really in this realm anymore. Depending on the dose that you get into, but if you're on a full-blown DMT experience, you're not writing anything down.
Yeah, I haven't been able to write anything down, but my DMT vape experience, I can still remember so profoundly because it was just validation of my life that I wasn't crazy and that people do astral project and I could just see it. But
now that those things you don't forget, the experience itself, the astral projection and the affirmations that you're not actually crazy. There is more to life than what society acknowledges right now, and that stuff sticks with you absolutely. But more so just the messages on what you need to improve or change your life for the better are the ones that kind of lose from the DMT a little easier. So that's why I make sure that I incorporate mushrooms and LSD into my life as well, and I plan to for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's a great spiritual practice, and honestly, when you're working at those higher doses, especially with the journaling practice or a yoga practice or something else to integrate in there, it can be really profound. I think there's something to it where you're consuming, even with cannabis, if you consume cannabis, it's going to last a lot longer. Whereas when you smoke it, even if it's the same dimension, like Dennis McKenna was saying with DMT, I think somehow maybe because of the way that we breathe, it metabolizes faster. Whereas when you eat something, you literally consume it. Sometimes, I don't even have to be working with mushrooms for years at a time. I did that when I was pregnant. I was Planned Parenthood wasn't out at that time, so I felt I was rebel enough. I took that time off, but I went years without, and I felt it was still there, if not stronger. The messages still coming through of the integration, that same guidance was there even when I wasn't using them. I think because it literally became a part of my being over time, working with it like a nutritional supplement, essentially.
Most definitely. And once you've opened your mind and your soul to the messages, if you're the mushrooms definitely, the psychedelics would definitely help amplify them, but if you're open and you are willing to accept them, then they come without the psychedelics in your system too, most definitely.
Yeah, it's almost like what Terence McKenna was saying on meditation and psychedelics. He said, meditation's great and all, but you got to be your own guru because there's just not enough time for everybody to learn how to meditate. But if you do psychedelics, you enter into that state and you're there instantly, and then you can get back there through meditation anytime, whenever you want.
Absolutely. Most definitely. When I tried meditation numerous times before I even after a mushroom or a LSD experience, but the same week that I first tried DMT, I was able to start meditating again, meditating for the first time, and I've been meditating every day since my first DMT experience, and it wasn't possible before I tried DMT. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the same for everyone, but the way that it's calmed my mind and allowed messages to come in, I find meditation to be quite easy now.
I've had some crazy meditational experiences because for me it wasn't the DMT that brought it. It was after I got sober, so the alcohol had fully left my system. It had been quite a while, and I had this really profound heroic dose experience. I've had heroic doses in the past, but once I had that one specific one, I swear to God, I could levitate in my meditation. I obviously wasn't, or maybe, I don't know, nobody was around. It could be like that Batman thing. Nobody can say I'm not Batman. They never saw me and Batman in the same room. Maybe I was levitating, but I definitely felt I was, and nobody was there to see me not do it.
So we don't know, but if you felt like it, then honestly, that pretty much all that really matters, and your soul was elevated. So that
that's a beautiful way of looking at it. Yes.
So that's all that really matters. His body and our soul are two separate things.
So we got a little while before we go to the sponsors. I'm curious, just from the science and stuff that's going around about psychedelics right now, with, them kind of going mainstream, from everybody trying to keep it. We're all of us in the psychedelic closet for so many years.
Yeah.
Like, what's your take on all of this?
It scares me a little bit. I see what happened when cannabis became legalized. Just the government gets their hands on it, and monetization becomes the main focus instead of what the actual, we'll use cannabis as an example, what cannabis can actually do for people. And that kind of concerns me about psychedelics. I mean, the psychedelic itself, like I was saying before, you're going to get the experience you're going to get. But once they start modifying them, I hear they're trying to make mushrooms that will never give you a bad trip. LSD that doesn't make you trip at all. So it just gives you the, so I don't know. I'm concerned about it a little bit. I think it's great that it's becoming more in the mainstream and it's becoming more accepted in society, and people are gaining from it mentally and like emotionally. It's changing people spiritually, like myself. But I'm just curious to see what happens. I have a pessimistic view a little bit, but I believe if it's taken care of properly and it takes its time to be completely legalized, I think we'll have a better chance of avoiding that. And it depends on the people that are getting involved and who's incorporating psychedelics into the mainstream. And I guess that depends on a lot of things.
Yeah, I hear you too. I love history. I didn't like school, but I do love history. I love the real history.
Absolutely.
Not just his story, but our story as humans.
The stuff we find out 40 years later, that's the actual. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like they did this with tobacco too. It's illegal for us to grow it. They said, oh yeah, with cannabis you can grow 4 plants. My thought was, for how long?
Absolutely need to until they realize that that's affecting how much money they're making. But I totally thought the same thing.
And what happened with tobacco? How many chemicals are in that now? If they're wearing hazmat suit to do that with cannabis, to grow cannabis, why are we smoking it and allowing it into our lungs from that same plant? Nobody's advertising like the organic cannabis because everybody assumes it's all organic.
I know, and the
organic can't be trusted fully anyway. I studied nutrition, but
there's only like 2, and the regulations the loopholes and regulations that they have to accommodate to do strictly organic are what's turning everybody else away from it. And even the organically grown cannabis, still some of those people send it through the irradiation process afterwards to ensure that there is no molds or mildews on it, which is completely unnecessary in my opinion. So what else are they going to do to alter the actual plant or psychedelic is just what concerns me. And I think it should be thought about before, because that's what happened with cannabis. Everybody was just so excited about it being legal. They didn't really think about what legal cannabis was going to look like. And in my opinion, it doesn't look very good. Yeah.
And same with, when we start looking at the psychedelics too, we go back into history and we see CIA used LSD to do all that MK Ultra mind control stuff. They already knew about all this stuff. And then what happened after all those experiments? They never said that stuff ended. And it's not just conspiracy. Like, the truth is that this is real information you can find and look up. They talk about it. It's okay.
Montreal as well. It wasn't just in the States. It wasn't just the CIA infiltrated Canada as well, and they were just
what's now our TVs. Yeah. It's just now it's turned into SSRIs and television screens, in my opinion.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Programming. And that's why, I mean, I think that's why they're trying to, now, we could go off on conspiracy theories here now forever, but I would assume that that's kind of why they're trying to alter the bad experiences out of the quote unquote bad experiences out of the psychedelics, because those are the ones that really open your mind to what's really going on.
Yeah, because then we have to take responsibility. Yeah, it
Absolutely.
sucks in the moment. Trust me, like, I've had a lot of these bad trips.
They're bad ones. Like, usually when it's happening, I'm like, I'm never doing this again. But then as soon as it's over, I'm like, oh, okay. That wasn't that bad, even though it was terrible at the time.
Once you get it, though, it's
and get through it, the sense of accomplishment is, and like, you feel like you've been through something that nobody else has been through. It's pretty profound.
Yeah, it changes you as a person into a stronger, more resilient, more level-headed person.
And empathetic as well.
Empathetic, yeah.
Most definitely.
Because we're humbled. We're humbled in those moments of really being in hell and knowing that, you know, at any time we could end up back there. It's humbling to know that we can hit that kind of a bottom. But
a different appreciation for the life that we're living right now. Even the hard times, it makes you realize that, hey, you know, if you've been through that, then whatever's happening right now isn't, your Amazon order is not coming till tomorrow. It's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah. We're such in that world now, though, where it has to be instant. It has to be now, and we don't have to work for nothing.
And
there's nothing. We don't even have to get up off our butts.
And then if we don't get it without working, we get all disappointed and the sense of loss. So we need, and that's why I think psychedelics, it's work, but you can do it on your couch or laying at home. You don't really have to go out. You can do this work on your own, and it's life-changing.
Yeah. But for somebody who's used to sitting on their couch, ordering food to their house, ordering whatever it is that they need and never having to move anywhere, you know, for that person, it might actually inspire you to get up and go for a walk.
Exactly. And
that's the beauty of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And give you that drive to want to experience life again and work for something.
Get that connection and that fire back in our souls.
The sense of accomplishment, I like to describe it as, it's nice, even if it's that accomplishment of, hey, I'm going to go for a walk every morning. Hey, I actually did that today. It's underrated, that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, especially in today's culture, but it is something that's so ingrained in us. You know, maybe not into our minds that have been so programmed, but once we remember through the use of these psychoactive plants, frogs, or fungi, you know, we remember, oh, wait, there is more to life. Oh, wait, I did have that experience before and I can have that again. You know, that childish curiosity, that light inside of our soul, that inspiration to do something.
And the drive to, like, enjoy life again. It feels like a cloud's lifted off of you. It's hard to describe to somebody that's never experienced a psychedelic journey before, but I think what we're saying is going to resonate with a lot of people that's had one before.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to cut to a break now because we got some wonderful sponsors that want to share what they've got to offer too. So I'll meet you back here in a few minutes, okay?
Absolutely. Talk soon.
Okay.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
At Legacy 420, we believe in being different.
Experience the difference of quality control.
Our labs provide tested formulations for all of our products.
Experience the difference in trust.
Our customers can trust that we are following up-to-date COVID precautions for their safety.
Experience the difference in accessibility.
We're open 7 days a week. Please visit our website, legacy420.com, or contact us for curbside pickup as well as nationwide mail order shipping.
Legacy 420 values overall wellness.
Come and experience the difference of Legacy 420.
In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to save the VCBC at gmail.com. I guess those are the two easiest ways for people to help right now.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Growing your own cannabis is easier than you think. Whether you're growing for recreational or medical purposes, BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. From the standard 4-plant recreational systems to the latest cutting-edge hydroponic equipment, BMA can customize your package and do it at discount prices. Visit BMA Hydroponics at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville and ask us for a free estimate. Or call 613-967-9888 and we will give you an estimate over the phone.
The only way to go.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Welcome back. Welcome back. All right.
Thank you.
So there's so much great stuff here. Where do we go? No, I think a question that I think comes up quite a bit is like, is psychedelics for everybody? Like, is it something that everybody should be doing or could be doing? Terence McKenna was so about that this was something everybody had to do. It was like a birthright. Everybody had to do it before they died. How do you feel about this?
I think that everybody who is ready for it should definitely do it, or has been through a lot. It's definitely not for everybody. There's a lot of undiagnosed mental illnesses out there that people haven't really acknowledged, and most definitely everybody could benefit from psychedelics, but not everybody should do psychedelics. I think that they should do research first before just jumping right in. There's a lot of good information out there online. And I mean, it depends on the situation 100%. Like it depends on what their life is like at the current time. Like if they're going through a lot of things and they just decide, I'm going to eat a handful of mushrooms and everything's going to be better. That's not the case at all. I would definitely suggest talking to a healthcare professional before, and just, maybe do some therapy. I would not suggest a pharmaceutical, but, talk to a therapist and maybe discuss some other options explore your options before jumping right into psychedelics. They are profound. I mean, if you don't know what you're doing and you have a negative experience right off the hop, you'll be turned off of them entirely anyway, so you're not going to benefit from that. They're definitely not a magical cure-all, but they definitely have the power to change the world.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And the truth is, there are just so many out there. There are the frogs, the fungus, the plants, there are the synthetics, there are the ones that we create in our bodies naturally. In the mushroom world, it's like something like 200 different mushrooms. In the plant world, there are even more. It's incredible. Like, I don't actually believe that, mushrooms are for everybody, because some people are allergic,
Absolutely. And then people, it depends on their mental state before they take the mushrooms. If they're already in a questioning reality and without psychedelics, then the psychedelics may not be the best option for them, because there might be an underlying mental illness issue that's there already that could be amplified by the psychedelics. I'm not saying psychedelics cause mental health issues, but there's not enough studies that are out yet on that, so I can't say that psychedelics are for everybody, and I think that's dangerous to say that. But I definitely think they can change the world, and people that have exhausted all other options, I think they should definitely consider psychedelics, but not just jump into it. Do research. There's a lot of research out there. There's places you can call. There's a lot of good information out there that you can access before doing psychedelics. Me personally, when I was doing this about 8 years ago now, I started my journey, there wasn't as much. It was out there, but it wasn't so much in the mainstream. There weren't Netflix documentaries on it when I started out, so I had no other option but to do it myself. But I'm not suggesting that anybody just dives into trying to heal themselves without some guidance from at least an experienced user.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important to take those steps in the preparation. Like, psychedelics aren't just you take them, you go. There really is this preparation phase.
Oh.
You said way earlier in this show too, like you have to psych yourself up for them even as an experienced user.
Oh, most definitely. And you can prepare yourself as much as you want, and you're still not going to be entirely ready for the full experience that has a potential to happen. Not every experience is going to shatter reality and make you question everything, but you've got to be ready for those ones to happen. And if you're not prepared for that and you haven't even heard about it, psychedelics could have a negative experience on your life, I would assume.
And for those who are seeking help, thinking, oh man, I have mental health disorder and maybe this one isn't for me, that's not saying that there's not a natural alternative out there for you, because I guarantee there is. It's much like diet. Yes, somebody can be allergic to a lot of things or have sensitivities to a lot of things, but we're human and we're meant to eat. And these are like a type of nourishment. It's just you have to find your own, what works for you and what doesn't.
There's ways around it, most definitely. If you got to find what's preventing you from, if there's actual health reasons why you should not do psychedelics, and you stay away from them. But if it's just you not be thinking you're ready for it, you should definitely explore the different levels. I mean, start maybe microdosing. Definitely incorporate it in some way or fashion. And there's many different options.
Yeah. What are some other misconceptions you see about psychedelics that could, help shift opinion?
Well, I just can't emphasize enough that psychedelics are not the magical cure-all. Psychedelics are a tool, an invaluable tool, and they can definitely help you heal and get to where you need to be. But if you're not incorporating the psychedelic lessons, then you're essentially just going to be treading water, like with any other recreational drug, for that matter.
Yeah.
So they're psychedelics are a tool; they're not a cure, and I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, I totally get that. And there really is these steps. Like back in the day, it used to be set and setting, and that's what you'd hear from Timothy Leary and all his guys. And now we're realizing, look, there's these other steps. There is the preparation, which includes the set and setting. There is the experience, and then there's the integration. That comes with its abundance of steps too. I wrote about this last year. I published a book, Rebirth, and I was breaking it up into the 7 sections based off the chakras, because at the time that I was writing it, I was a mom and my son's almost 7. So I was like, wow, it really is a birth. We go through these stages just like the kids. And it's because I was going through my integration journey alongside my son being raised. But, I was seeing this breakdown and it was just so profound. Yeah, it did. Like aligning those chakras. But, we have these steps, in order to have respect for them, there comes also like reverence, and part of it is taking these steps in preparation, and then the steps in the ceremony, and the steps in the integration work. Each step has a number of steps to be followed. Research is one of those.
And they're all important.
Yeah, they are. You think about it as like building a bridge. You need that foundation before you go across this big gap, or you're going to fall in, and who knows what's going to happen.
You have to start over from the beginning.
Yeah. By fluke, somebody may end up, on the other side, but it might be a tumble to get there.
Yeah, right.
They might not be in the best shape when they land.
Exactly. And it's good to land in the best shape possible on the other side.
Yeah, because there's work to be done once you know what it is.
And in my opinion, it's work for the rest of your life, but it's a lifelong journey, and I think that's what life's all about.
Yeah. Yeah, and part of it too is knowing that intention. I think like you really knew that your need to start working with psychedelics was to get sober and stay sober. Without the 12 steps, that wasn't working.
Right. Absolutely.
That was part of mine too, and it's that intention that brought me this far, and I'm still doing the work too. Like, trust me, I wake up and I know what my work is to do and still be humbled in that way. But for somebody who's coming in and just saying, I want to do this for spiritual enlightenment, or I want to do this for because it's going to heal all my pain in one go. It's like, no, it's going to show you where your pain is so that you can do that work to reduce it over time. And
absolutely, it's not, and it's and that too. That's a good point. It's not an overnight thing. It takes its time. I mean, years most definitely. But with every psychedelic experience, you see that these tools are helping you, and they are the answer to get you to where you need to be. So after, you're not going to be cured or healed after the first, second, or third experience, but you'll get that motivation and you'll get the affirmation that it's definitely possible to heal with psychedelics if you do the integration, as you were saying.
Yeah, and it's not like when you go to the pharmaceutical industry or to your doctor and they prescribe you something, whether it's pain meds, which are ridiculous because even somebody who's never addicted to anything can get addicted within 2 weeks. Sometimes it only takes one dose. So, there are these crazy risk factors. But some of them, like SSRIs, you're on them for life. Some, like the diabetes medication or things that they're giving women for PCOS, you're on there for the rest of your life, and when it comes to the psychedelics, you don't have to take them every day. You won't, even if you're on this journey for the rest of your life. Like absolutely. Greg, who's committed as a spiritual practice, is a couple times a year. It's not every single day by regimen.
And you don't have to. Like, I don't have to. I choose to. And SSRIs and these other medications and pain medications, you have to. Otherwise, you'll get sick. I can't speak for the side effects from withdrawal from SSRIs because I don't know them, but I can't imagine those are too pleasant either. If you stop working with psychedelics, you just won't get any messages. You can still work from the messages that you've already gotten, and it's still possible to totally improve your life and continue on the path without incorporating psychedelics. It's just I choose to. And that's the difference between pharmaceuticals and psychedelics, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. And in you saying that, I can really tell you've taken that responsibility. I don't think any recovering addict would want to submit to doing the same thing every single day. We're too restless for that. And I think one of the reasons why we become addicts is because we are restless with the way culture is. We only restlessly tolerate it because it sucks. Yes. So why would we want to give away our power to be on some medication so we can numb what we don't feel is right in ourselves?
Just to fit into society's measures of what a person should be. It's just uncomfortable. And that's why I think not everybody, but there's so many people that are on SSRIs and they're prescribing more and more every day. but I think society's starting to realize that all of those medications are a band-aid. They don't fix anything. And if you actually want to heal yourself, you need to incorporate psychedelics into your life and integrate what you've learned from each psychedelic experience. And that's the only way to truly heal. And I think everybody's starting to realize that.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm curious from the science perspective, what's the most intriguing finding that's really come up for you so far?
It has to be that the studies they're doing at Imperial College with the intravenous DMT drips, where they're keeping people in for about an hour, and each we touched on this a little bit before, but that's truly mind-blowing to me, that people that have never met each other before, are not in the same room, are not having the experience even on the same day, are all reporting to go to the same dimension, communicating with these same beings or energy or what have you, and they're actually mapping these realms, and the different participants in this study are all mapping very, very similar realms, and they have no knowledge of, they don't know the other persons that are being participants in the study. So, I mean, that just brings up so many more questions, and that's why I find it truly amazing. We're just at the precipice now, and I think we're going to find so much more out in the next few years that society is going to have major changes.
Yeah. You kind of, when I hear that study, as cool as I know the outcomes are going to be, whether they tell us the truth or not, it's still a step forward. It's crazy to me to think that, when we think about mushrooms, you're consuming it, DMT, you're normally inhaling it. But this is a drip. This is a totally different way of taking it. Chances are the effects are going to be quite different already, but let alone that it's continuous. Like, you're staying there for a long time. It's
when you're smoking it, you're like flooding your system, and I think that's what makes it so disorienting. Like, you're launched there, but they give you enough to get you there and to keep you in there is what's actually, because when you smoke DMT, DMT is the active ingredient in ayahuasca too. So when you consume ayahuasca, you're consuming DMT, and it has the MAOI inhibitors in the plants. So it actually allows you to, the DMT to absorb into your liver that way. So you're getting, but at the same time, because it's absorbed in through your stomach, you're not getting it directly into your bloodstream, and that's why the intravenous drip in the continuous intravenous drip that they're doing at Imperial College is essentially groundbreaking, in my opinion, because I mean you're getting a lengthy DMT experience when you're consuming ayahuasca, but it's still not amplified as much as when you smoke it. So when it's directly administered into your bloodstream intravenously, you're still getting the same intensity as when you smoke it, but for that extended period of time like you would get for ayahuasca. So, I mean, sign me up.
So why do you think, they forbid this science for a long time? Why do you think it was lied about and, kind of kept underground? What's your take on all that?
Well, because you can't make money off of healed people, essentially. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry is obviously the largest money-making corporation on planet. I guess the tech industry is catching up closely now, but before
and eyeglasses. Eyeglasses was the top one in Canada last year, and it's still prescription, it's still medical, but it's a side of medical we don't hear about much.
No, and not think about it, really. See, now
we're all staring at screens. All the kids in schools are on screens, wearing glasses.
Oh, and they don't, and they're like, here, glasses, your problem solved, instead of let's correct your vision. And it all comes down to making money, in my personal opinion. And psychedelics can actually heal people if they're used properly as a tool. And yeah, like I said, like a couple of times a year for myself, and I consider myself a major advocate for psychedelics and a user myself, but again, a few times a year. But SSRI patients every day, and then what if it's not working? The answer is, well, try this one as well, or take a larger dose. It's not, well, what's the real issue? So the reason, in my opinion, it's been swept under the rug for so long is that it actually works, and you can't make money off of healed people.
Or these patents, you know, now they figured out how to patent this stuff by altering it through what they've done with food. They found their way in, but at the time there was none of that. You can't patent nature, but so they'd make a pharmaceutical. Now people are still saying, I want to come back to nature. They're like, sure, we'll give it to you, but you know, but why don't we do this for your own good, and we'll take away the bad trip, and we'll take away the stomach.
The stuff that heals you. Yeah, you're not gonna get the it's just you're gonna see pretty colors and giggle for 8 hours. And I mean, when those trips come up, I consider them a gift, and that I'm doing well, and my life is aligned perfectly. So not perfectly, but I am where I need to be in that state, and that's what I consider those trips. But
they're great, right?
Yeah, they're nice. I mean, they're really nice. Like, oh, sweet, everything's great right now, and they're good. But I mean, those are like the affirming experiences. Like, yes, you're doing the proper work. You're where you need to be. You're on the right path. And people love hearing that, but people don't like hearing that they're screwing up and they're doing they need to change their life. And I mean, but again, the mushrooms only tell you what you need, and the psychedelics only tell you what you need to hear. And some people don't want to hear what they need to hear, and that's why they call it a bad trip. And if we alter the psychedelics to make the bad trips not happen, and it's all warm, fuzzy, cool colors and giggles, then I mean, that's not going to be healing people, and I mean, they'll still be making their money because people are having fun. So that's just what I'm cautious about the whole thing, and I don't think that we should just jump into legalization like they did with cannabis, because we're seeing that there's a lot of issues with the cannabis legalization right now. So I would, I'm not in any rush to see them legalized yet. Decriminalized is beautiful. Used in therapeutic settings is beautiful as well, but full access recreational, I'm not in any rush for that.
Yeah, you know, my mind even like goes to these other registries that they have, like hunting, fishing, guns, like all this stuff. It's like, the truth is, when things are illegal, like just biasly saying here, when things are illegal, we actually have more freedom, because once it's registered, more people know about what we're doing, and they want to know our business and all this. And it's like, that's annoying. That's drama. And that takes away.
And that's when you start hearing these fake stories about, I mean, people have definitely had negative reactions where they want to run around and strip their clothes off. But I mean, people don't jump out of buildings and off bridges. I mean, people do that when they drink alcohol. And then once it becomes more and more mainstream is when you're going to start hearing more and more negative stories behind them. So I'm again, like, I'm in no rush.
Yeah, me too. All right. So do you think that when they bring in psychedelics into the medical field and, you know, back into pharma and things, because right now it is already happening, whether we like it or not, and that's where it starts before legality, or before, you know, we're allowed it as a recreational, even though we're not using it that way. But, you know, do you think that they're going to bring any spiritual aspects to it?
Hopefully. And you know what? I think if it sounds like first it's going to be actual mushrooms instead of mushroom extracts that are going to be used. And the mushrooms for spirituality anyways. Like, I don't think... It's between the mushrooms and the patient, in my opinion, whether or not the therapist or the person administering the mushrooms is a spiritual person. regardless. I mean, I'd be wary of taking mushroom from somebody that wasn't using mushrooms themselves. I would think that I wouldn't trust the situation, in my opinion. I think that if I was seeking help in a therapeutic situation, I would want, not at the time obviously, but I would want the therapist or the person administering me the mushrooms to know what mushrooms do to them, as well as before they say it's okay for them to give it to me. So
yeah, why don't they do that in the medical industry already? Like, I question that. Like, imagine if all the doctors had to take all the psychiatry medicine that they're giving out. Some of them do. Like, I've worked with some psychiatrists that have been on some crazy formulas, but you know, they're the ones that are coming to me for psychedelics now.
Right?
Yeah, but then there's also these other ones that haven't tried any of them for themselves. They don't have the same experiences to go in. They're prescribing these meds that they don't know anything about because they're not trained on it. They're trained to sit there and find out if somebody's a right fit for a certain medication. They're not trained to find the root causes anymore. And if ever...
That's not medicine. That's glorified drug sales. I mean, sales representative, in my opinion. So,
and then that's why they end up on the medication themselves, because they're like, this is not in alignment. This isn't what I paid for. This isn't what I signed up for.
Exactly, and then right. So, and to answer your question, so I think that spirituality just comes hand in hand with therapeutic doses of psilocybin, DMT. LSD is a little less spiritual in my opinion, but it's if your intent is spirituality with LSD, then you'll definitely achieve it. But for psilocybin and DMT, I would say that spirituality just is a side effect from them. It comes along with it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And it's in its natural form, right? Like LSD, you're saying already, it's not as spiritual, but it's also a mushroom or a fungus that's been modified.
But it has been. It's synthesized from the ergot fungus. But again, it depends. LSD has a lot more human variables to it, like interaction. Like it depends on the chemist and the where you're getting it from. So there's a lot of different forms of LSD because the chemicals they're making to produce LSD aren't widely available and they're very regulated. So they're synthesizing the chemical that's been synthesized. So LSD is quite hit, and LSD is great and it has you just have to make sure that you're getting it from a very trusted source, whereas mushrooms are just a fungus that's grown, so it's all very, very limited human interaction with them. And DMT is extracted from a root bark, so again, you're just extracting it, you're not synthesizing it. And that's why I think it's more common to have a spiritual experience through those two as opposed to LSD, because again, you don't really know the purity levels of the LSD you're getting. And it depends, like if you're taking LSD to come up with a new solution to a scientific problem or a different mode of computer programming, then you're not going to get a spiritual aspect from it. But again, like it's definitely a positive tool to incorporate. So
yeah. Do you ever work with mimosa on its own? Mimosa for DMT, Mimosa hostilis. Do you ever work with it on its own?
No, the concentration levels are very, very low. So that's why it has to be extracted. It's like mimosa is considered one of the most rich DMT plants out there, and it only contains about like a 1.7% volume of DMT, so very, very, very low. So pretty
like
much
nano dose.
Yeah, you'd have to extract the actual DMT itself, and then you can microdose with like a DMT vape card or something like that. Like you by no means do you have to have the full breakthrough experience that I'm described when I talk about my DMT experiences. But from my experience and the people that I know that have smoked DMT and had the breakthrough experience, any other experience after that just seems like not like a waste of time, but just, you know, you could gain so much more by having to go in deep.
Yeah.
Like even for mushrooms, like personally, like I don't now that I have no interest in recreational doses of mushrooms, so I do microdose, but that's just to help keep my mind calm and in between my larger 4+ gram doses. And now I don't bother really with a 1 gram. I just go in deep. I use them medicinally. So the microdose is definitely has its medicinal values, but to get that real healing and the true messages, I go for the large dose.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You know, I've felt that myself too, you know, for a big period of my journey. So we got about 7 minutes left here. And I just have one last question for you.
Sure.
And that's, it's something I ask all of our guests here. And that's, if I was to hand you a dandelion to make a wish for yourself or the planet or this movement, what's that wish that you would make?
I would wish that everyone would just take a second to breathe and really just think for themselves. Try and maybe turn off the news or social media for even 1 day. Try 3 days and just really think for yourself and just enjoy life and nature and everything that's around, as opposed to being told what to be worried about and what the next thing to be offended by. Just, you know, just take a breath and think for yourself.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I love how you put that into perspective too, because it's so true. And I do it, you know, I go on airplane mode quite often, and when I go on road trips, oftentimes it's off or it's on music and audio, and still again airplane mode. That's kind of my thing.
Exactly. It's good.
I do it often throughout the day.
You owe it to yourself, and that's even a form of meditation in it. You know, just meditation isn't completely clearing your mind and focusing on nothing. It's just relaxing your mind and focusing on yourself and your breath.
Yeah. And if you can take the time to get outside, it really is a representation of getting outside of yourself too, getting outside of that mind. It's such a beautiful change in environment. And we're both, you and I are in Canada here. You know, it's winter. And, you know, we can still get out there.
Even 10 minutes, just like even walk up and down the street will just change how you go about the rest of your day. It's unbelievable. I make sure I go every day.
Yeah.
Even if it's walk to the end of the driveway and back. It's just that fresh air and the sunlight really will change your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And we need it more. In these times of years, you know, or the time of year. We're about halfway through winter now, and this is the snow moon today on our recording. So it's a really powerful one. But after this, things get warmer and longer. And I think it's nice to take these times in themselves, you know, and appreciate each one of the seasons for the different blessings it gives, you know. And this one, take a little bit of extra rest time. But also still, you know, get outside of yourself and your house, and
for sure you can do both. Stroll. You can do both. You can take a stroll and then come home and have a nap.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else you want to share?
No, I think we've covered everything. Pretty much.
Yeah, we've covered a lot. Thank you so much.
Fun. Thanks, Ashley. It's been great.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. Bye.
Okay, thanks again. Bye-bye.
It was the most peaceful, joyous, incredible, life-changing experience I've ever had in my life. There were scary parts, foreboding parts. I always knew there was beautiful and joy and peace on the other side of it. It was freeing. It was really freeing.
This is Alana. She's describing what she felt after she took a dose of this stuff, psilocybin. It's a naturally occurring psychedelic compound, the kind that you find in magic mushrooms, but she wasn't tripping in a dorm room or a Woodstock. It actually wasn't recreational at all.
If anything became unreal, or I was feeling nervous or not in touch with reality, I would squeeze his hand and he would squeeze mine back just to reassure me that I was okay and everything was all right.
It was part of a controlled medical test to see if psychedelics could be useful in helping people quit cigarettes. Alana had been smoking for 37 years before her session with psilocybin, and she hasn't had a cigarette since. Research on psychedelics for medical use is preliminary. Most studies suffer from really small sample sizes, and that's partly because the federal government lists LSD and psilocybin as Schedule I drugs. So researchers face extra red tape, and funding is really hard to come by. Vox writer Herman Lopez reviewed dozens of studies that have been done, and he found that psychedelics show promise for treating addiction, OCD, anxiety, and in some cases, depression. One small study of 15 smokers found that 80% were able to abstain from smoking for 6 months after a psilocybin treatment. In a pilot study of 12 advanced cancer patients suffering from end-of-life anxiety, participants who took psilocybin generally showed lower scores on a test of depression. And a smaller study suggested that psilocybin treatment could actually help people with alcohol dependence cut back on their drinking days. We don't have all the answers as to what exactly these treatments are doing in the brain, but they seem to work by providing a meaningful and even mystical experience that leads to lasting changes in a patient's life.
The issues that I talked about or thought about or went into during my experience were transformative in the sense that I got to look at them through a different lens.
I know this sounds weird. I feel like I have more connections in my brain that I couldn't access before.
That feeling that Alana is describing is actually pretty spot on. When you take LSD, your brain looks something like this. You can actually see a higher degree of connectivity between various parts of the brain. It's not limited to the visual cortex. This communication inside the brain helps explain visual hallucinations, and the researchers argue that it could also explain why psychedelics can help people overcome serious mental issues. They wrote that you can think of psychiatric disorders as the brain being entrenched in pathology. Harmful patterns become automated and hard to change, and that's what can make things like anxiety and addiction and depression very hard to treat.
The reason that those kinds of conditions are so difficult to treat is that there's something more to them than just the illness.
That's Albert Garcia Ramu. He's a Johns Hopkins researcher who's worked on studies of psilocybin and smoking addiction, like the one that Alana's involved with. He says that when participants take psychedelics,
they have very profound, meaningful experiences that can sometimes help them to make new insights into their own behaviors, and also to kind of reconnect with their values and priorities in terms of what's very important to them.
One of the big remaining questions here is how long these benefits actually last after the one-time treatment. A review of research on LSD-assisted psychotherapy and alcoholism found no statistically significant benefits after 12 months. And a recent study on psilocybin and depression found that benefits significantly dropped off after just 3 months. And of course, there are some big risks to using psychedelic drugs. It's hard to predict a patient's reaction, and some might actually endanger themselves. Those predisposed to psychotic conditions are especially at risk for having a traumatic experience while on the drug. It's difficult to draw solid conclusions from the existing studies, but there's more than enough promise here to merit further research and further funding for that research. As Matthew Johnson of Johns Hopkins said, these are among the most debilitating and costly disorders known to humankind. For some people, no existing treatments help, but psychedelics might. One thing you might still be wondering is why so much of this research is so new when we've known about psychedelics for thousands of years. Well, since these drugs are so old, they can't be patented, which means that pharmaceutical companies don't really have any incentive to fund any research into them. So that really leaves it up to governments and private contributors to fund all these studies. And there actually was a lot of research done into these drugs in the 50s and 60s, but there was a big enough backlash to the abuse of psychedelics in that period, especially around events like Woodstock, that funding really dried up and research stopped. And that's why it's only now that we see this research happening with private and not government contributions.
Anyone who knows him would tell you John Costas should be dead by now.
I'd be dead by 30 was a popular number.
Alcohol was killing him. It got an early start.
Probably around 12 was my first drink.
Soon, getting drunk was not enough.
My first AA meeting was at 16. 16. I was a sophomore in high school.
AA didn't work, nor did any other rehab. Doctors told Costas he was drinking himself to death.
Because even when I stopped drinking, I was miserable. I wanted to drink, and when I was drinking, I didn't want to drink. And those were the only two worlds that I knew.
His last hope, he says, psilocybin, a compound found in psychedelic mushrooms.
I was terrified of psychedelics. I never touched them.
Yet he signed up for a double-blind study with 92 other participants at NYU Langone Health, incorporating psychotherapy and psilocybin. The results, very promising. More than 80% who were given the psychedelic treatment drastically reduced their drinking. 48% were completely abstinent 8 months after receiving their first dose.
Their improvement was evident immediately during the month after the first dose of psilocybin.
Dr. Michael Bogenschutz headed the study.
There wasn't really any sign that the effect was diminishing over time.
Through 12 weeks of psychotherapy, participants were given 2 doses of psilocybin and were given an option for a third. During the sessions, they were accompanied by 2 staff members who monitored them for possible physical or psychological side effects.
We know that psilocybin can make it possible for the brain to change more than it ordinarily would.
That change is called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to modify, change, and adapt. The theory, the psilocybin makes the brain more malleable. Costas had profound transcendent reactions to the psilocybin.
I saw a liquor bottle in the middle of a desert, and all of a sudden it disintegrates into the sand. And I thought that was pretty obvious symbolism for my alcoholism leaving me.
The researchers have not kept track of how many participants remain abstinent. Costas, one of the first patients, says he has not had a drink in nearly 7 years.
It was never a case where I could just have a drink and then not have another drink.
Nicola D'Alessandro also participated in the study. The psilocybin's effect, mind-altering and life-changing.
The third dose was like the icing on the cake that completed my experience and allowed me to move forward in life with a new path, a new hope. Hard not to cry.
It's not that it's a miracle cure that works for every single participant, but a lot of the patients will report they learned something that was very personal and very critical for them to understand in order to make these major changes in their lives.
The results are promising, but more research is needed, says Dr. Bogenschutz.
If the results of this study are replicated and we eventually are able to show that this drug can be safe and effective and it becomes clinically available, it could impact millions and millions of lives.
Harry Smith, NBC News, New York.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
These experiences are often called ineffable, but as a scientist, I do my best to F it up by trying to describe it as much as I can, so I'll go ahead and do that. Our society has been in a mental health crisis, and it's been stagnating. A large portion of people treated with traditional antidepressants don't see benefit. Psychedelics are the only drug class that I know of where you have not just 1 or 2, but lots of stories of people saying they took this thing one time and they say it had this profound impact on the course of their entire life. They really exploded on the scene in the 1960s and were associated with some really radical changes to society that really scared a lot of people. I think now society is more ready to kind of accept these compounds and the whole picture of them. I'm Matt Johnson. I'm a professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins. I study drugs principally psychedelics. It's hard to imagine a more interdisciplinary topic in the realm of drugs than psychedelics. They've apparently been used for time immemorial throughout many different cultures on the planet. Kary Mullis won the Nobel Prize inventing PCR, which revolutionized biology. He said he wouldn't have been able to do that had he not had experience in taking psychedelics. You move into the arts and then, who hasn't heard of musicians and other artists claiming that psychedelics had a profound impact on their creativity? There's the Beatles before LSD, and then there's the Beatles after LSD. That's a big shift. The initial big wave of that scientific interest for psychedelics was in the 1950s. So this was about a decade after Albert Hofmann had first discovered the psychoactive properties of LSD. There was a group in Maryland called the Spring Grove Group, a lot of early research there, particularly with cancer patients. But I would say one of the most important groups in the history of this work was led by Abram Halfer and Humphrey Osmond in Saskatchewan, Canada. They were really the first group that I would say developed what we now call psychedelic therapy. There was this growing appreciation of some of the risks and the safeguards needed to minimize those risks, but not every investigator was aware of this. There was some unethical research, some wild research. There was controversy surrounding Timothy Leary, especially after he was fired from Harvard.
Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
Psychedelics became so associated with the counterculture. Society was, in a sense, traumatized. It all came to a halt. There were researchers that were running sessions and got the notices they just had to stop. The rug is pulled out for decades before there's a reinitiation. The research that's happening now, a lot of it is exploring medical applications. These are all drugs that can have a profound effect on one's sense of reality, including one's sense of self. I think kind of the only bet you can make is that if you have the dose high enough, something really interesting is going to happen. You might find yourself in your mind's eye, soaring in the heavens, the secrets of the universe seemingly revealed to you. On the other hand, 5 seconds later, it might collapse into what folks call a bad trip, where one could feel like they're gonna die. It's sort of this like massive shakeup in one's experience of reality. I'm floored when people with really substantial life experience will say things like, this was the most meaningful experience of their life. Compared to the intensity of the subjective effects, it's remarkable how little impact these substances have on physiology. Your heart rate, your blood pressure, everything has its risk, to be clear. But compared to other drug classes, psychedelics are really robustly safe at the physiological level. My therapeutic research with psychedelics has primarily used psilocybin, which is the agent in magic mushrooms. The dose we now give to patients is anywhere from 30 milligrams to 40 milligrams, which Terence McKenna, who's the famous psychedelic bard, would refer to repeatedly as the heroic dose. If a microdose is over here and a recreational dose is over here, we're way over here. When someone comes in for the day of their psychedelic session, they've already spent several hours with us on previous days preparing for the experience, developing that rapport. We know that all drugs are in part shaped by the context in which they're given, but for the psychedelic substances, that's particularly more so. So when you provide it in more of a warm, welcoming situation, you tend to get more meaningful reactions to the substance. When the experience unfolds, the person is going to lay down, wear eye shades and headphones through which music is played. So the idea is kind of get out of your normal, everyday, discursive, analyzing intellect. We really just encourage them to trust, let go, and be open. Trust the overall process. Going into this type of treatment is not easy at all. Trust yourself that you're robust. You're going to get through this experience. Let go. What does let go mean? Let go means whatever your preconceived notions of what this experience might be or what experience you should have, don't let that get in the way for the experience that you will have. Don't try to control it. And be open. No matter where this takes you, go there. Whatever the experience is, take the orientation of, this is what I need to deal with. The range of experiences are just so broad. You can swing from a terrifying experience to this beatific, sort of like most amazing experience of your life. Some people could feel like they've reached the end of reality, this kind of plane of existence. Others say that they can feel the suffering across the entire planet, sort of having this sort of experience of universal empathy. It's all welcome. The laughter, the tears, everything in between. That's exactly what this process is for. So the integration phase is where we're discussing the experience with them, and the themes that come up are so varied. One of the aspects you could call revealed truth. And I call these duh moments. These are experiences where people will feel like they've learned something at such a fundamental level. I think of examples in our work we've done with cancer patients where, oftentimes people will say, I'm allowing this to create my own suffering. The cancer hasn't killed me yet. I can still live life, but I'm letting it do this to me. They knew it up here. They could tell you the words, but now they feel it in their bones. They feel it in their heart. People are reminded about this power they have to choose their own destiny. Some people come out of these sessions as participants and say that, 1 6-hour experience with psilocybin is like 1,000 hours of therapy. But one of the pitfalls of this clinical work is that you'd be hard-pressed to find a more intimate and vulnerable psychological intervention for a person. That's just a situation that is ripe for abuses if we don't have the right safeguards. Because of that vulnerability, because of the incredible gravity of these sessions, we need to even more tenaciously cling to clinical boundaries. We need to limit the use of therapeutic touch. A subtler form of abuse is just filling in the blanks for people. I call it the guru complex. People often confront big picture questions. What is the meaning of life? Does God exist? What's the big picture of everything that's going on? What am I? On those metaphysical questions, we really have to be silent. In the biggest picture, aside from psychedelics' ability to treat one disorder or another, I think they're just poised to really help us to understand the nature of psychiatric disorders. What commonalities do they have with each other that are somehow being addressed by psychedelic treatment? I kind of think of all of these disorders as different forms of addiction. So whether it's to a substance like tobacco or alcohol, cocaine, or a way of thinking about yourself, it's this narrowed mental and behavioral repertoire. Reality used to be like this, and now your reality is like this. And psychedelics, when done well, in the right setting, had the ability to just blow people out of that narrowed story. It holds a lot of promise in helping us figure out what it takes for the human being to be mentally healthy.
DMT, or N,N-dimethyltryptamine, is found in a number of plants that are indigenous to South America. The Sonoran desert toad is known to have 5-MeO-DMT in its venom. This drug is molecularly similar to DMT. It is 4 to 6 times more powerful than DMT and can cause serotonin syndrome at higher doses. It is also known to cause hypothermia at lower doses in rats and hyperthermia at higher doses. When consumed with a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, it could be deadly. Through extensive research, it is proposed that DMT is endogenous and originally starts off as tryptophan. Through the action of enzymes, it is converted to tryptamine, then to NMT, and then to the final product of DMT. DMT is structurally similar to serotonin. Serotonin is a neurochemical and is associated with controlling mood, appetite, sleep, memory, and learning. The drug acts as a serotonin agonist and binds to many serotonin receptors, in particular the 5-HT2A receptor, which is linked to the psychedelic activity of the drug. It can also act as an agonist to the metabotropic glutamate receptor 2, which is also said to contribute to the psychedelic effects. Research proposing that DMT is endogenously produced in the human brain has also led to the speculations regarding its role in certain physiological and neurological states. In the 1960s and 70s, it was proposed that DMT was involved in psychosis and schizophrenia. This hypothesis was developed from the comparisons of the blood and urine samples of patients who had schizophrenia and control subjects. However, the research was deemed inconclusive. DMT was also linked with proteins that help promote the maintenance of long-term memory and regeneration of neurons. The drug has the ability to bind to organelles such as mitochondria and endoplasmic reticulum, and could possibly have the ability to even kill certain cancer cells. In 2013, researchers found DMT in the pineal glands of rodents. In the following year, researchers have stated that the biosynthesis of DMT takes place in the melanoma cell line. Dr. Rick Strassman believes that DMT is a spirit molecule. He claims that DMT is released while we dream, and furthermore in large quantities during traumatic experiences. However, these claims have not yet been proven. DMT is typically inhaled. A light dose is considered to be 10 to 20 milligrams, a more common dose is 20 to 40 milligrams, and a high dose is somewhere between 40 to 60 milligrams. When DMT is inhaled, it lasts around 10 to 15 minutes and can begin to work within a minute. Although the duration is short, many subjects have stated it feels much longer, with some even expressing that it feels like an eternity. Subjects who have taken DMT have also claimed to have visited different realms and universes, with time and space no longer being a restriction. Often reports of meeting extraterrestrials and even God have been described. Once the drug wears off, the person is left rather confused, and in some circumstances can only remember small parts of the experience. It is often the case that the person finds it difficult to put into words what an experience of DMT can be like.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network, here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420 enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.